Hi, welcome to Art You Crazy, the podcast that flips the script on the struggling artist paradigm.
We're your hosts, Tessie
and Erin Elizabeth Reed.
Two artistic multi-hyphenates who believe that every person is creative.
And every creative should pursue their passions. Each episode,
we shine a light on our and others' creative journeys along the pathway to personal success.
If living a life of creative purpose sounds daring, then yeah, you could call us crazy.
We embrace it.
And we want to know, aren't you crazy too? No, seriously.
'Cause we are.
Welcome to Art You Crazy? I am definitely crazy.
I feel like we are a little crazy. This episode is coming to you across international wires. Tessie is currently visiting in Mexico with family. Yes. How's it going down there?
It's going really well. I think I catched a cold.
Oh, no.
But everything has been great and family is doing good. So I'm grateful to be here for a little bit.
I'm glad to hear that part. I miss you, though.
But I miss you, too, a lot.
Well, it's really nice to be back in the studio, theoretically, with you. And you know what? I think it's a really cool timing, actually, that we are currently not in the same physical space, because I thought today we might talk about the solitude that's seems to be a necessary part of the artist's journey to realizing their artistic calling, if you will, and how maybe that changes along the way. Like, is solitude necessary?
It is really beautiful in English, I think, because in Spanish we don't have a word to differentiate like you do in English. You have solitude and loneliness, right? So I think solitude is necessary sometimes to reflect, to think about the journey, to maybe find some mindful space for ideas to flow and not hear so much noise and chaos. The voices that tell you what you need to do as an artist, but that doesn't mean that you have to be lonely. I think that you can find solitude while still having a very strong community, which is, I think, a support system and a strong community is vital for the artist. I think you can't really be alone because it's the paved road to destruction.
I like this. Well, because when I first thought of the idea talking about solitude, I guess I was infusing it with the concept of being lonely. Because I know starting out, I was surrounded by people, but I often felt lonely amongst them.
That happens to me a lot because it depends on the type of connection of the people that are around you, right? I always feel lonely when I'm in a very superficial setting. For example, like I can be surrounded by thousands of people that are obviously not connecting with one another and they're just following a trend or just flowing and trying to be something that they're not or seeking validation in a way. I really find those environments really lonely.
So, for example, when I moved to Los Angeles right at the start of 2014, I was in a new place, literally new geography, didn't know anyone except for one playwright friend who we actually became his roommate, like it was going to be crash on his couch, but it turned out he ended up having a free spare bedroom. Thank goodness, because we were there for 9 months. But other than Peter, didn't know anybody. So it became this process of trying to find community, which we did and found a number of incredibly lovely people. Sometimes I remembered feeling like even in the midst of that community, I felt like I was on this lone journey that I didn't know that I could open up and share with anybody.
Yeah, I hear you. It feels maybe that the experiences that you're having are not shared experiences. They are almost isolated thoughts or isolated experiences that might be scary to share because it might feel like the others will not understand or they will not identify themselves with the experiences that are being held. I do think that every artist has, if I can describe it in a metaphor, we're all in little gel bubbles of solitude. And sometimes we let people into our gel bubbles and we fusion the bubbles together.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes we separate again as individual nucleus. Because obviously, as much as you share a vision or an idea, your creative genius or your creative entity will always be your own.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, you are somehow alone, but we are at the same time together in our loneliness.
As I'm reflecting back on that experience, that time in my life, I realize I'm clued into how maybe what I was experiencing had more to do with the state I was in, my personal emotional state, and not being willing or able to open up and share. I guess just, living with more fear than I was willing to acknowledge.
Funny that you mentioned Los Angeles, because I feel like in Los Angeles, it was the most lonely time of my life. Besides, in New York, because I had the pandemic and everything, it was lonely in a different way, being literally isolated from the rest of the world because of the situation that was going on. But in LA, I did feel that it was really hard to reach out when you don't belong to a work environment or a school environment in Los Angeles. When you come from the outside and you try to fit in or engage into established circles, it is quite hard to make way for yourself. It is not that easy to be received. And it was in LA where I found, thanks to getting more involved in the arts for mental health community, that I felt like we were having a real community, a real connection, and a real shared experience, because this is one of the core values of doing artistic things together for mental health, is that we are going to try to find a common space for us not to feel so lonely or isolated, and to get a shared experience, even if you live it in a different way than we're still sharing the same moment and we're together in that. It's like this podcast. We are together in this, even though I'm in a little closet in the middle of my aunt's house in Mexico and you're in the marvelous cave of Hades in your apartment. We're still sharing this experience, even though it might be different for each one of us. And that creates a certain solitudinous togetherness.
Yeah. Presence comes to mind. Being present together, which I think requires vulnerability and trust. I don't know if I should apologize for this conversation taking such a almost melancholy turn. It's not what I had intended.
Not at all. You don't need to apologize.
Coming up for me in this moment.
Hey, you just said it, like being present, right? If this is coming right now to you, you're being present to your moment and this is what's coming. That's what it's authentic about this. We're living the moment. We honor that. And there's no need for any apologies. I feel like it is something important to discuss this theme about solitude and isolation in the artistry or creativity realm. Maybe we actors, writers, leave it even more pronounced, because a lot of the work that we do has a component of figuring out things on our own until we get to the collective experience or until the writing is published and it becomes something collective. But in the meantime, there is this obviously almost deserted land where you have to navigate, putting yourself out there, being vulnerable, being present, what you just said, and at the same time, being open to letting either people in or expose yourself in a way.
Right. Letting your ideas out to be seen, potentially critiqued, even ridiculed. You can't control. It's out of your control.
And with this topic that we're discussing, you also brought up how we deal with these challenges, right, of isolation or solitude, and how we find our way to have a solid community to create, or even, I don't like the term safe space anymore. I like more the term of brave space. Yeah, because you're daring to be yourself, right? You're braving out to, I don't know if braving is even a verb.
Yeah, I'll accept that.
to be around people that allow you to be brave. I believe that, in my journey as a creative or as an artist, I feel like before I wanted to be in every space at all cost because I wanted to fit in, and the more spaces I could cover, the better. And the older I get, or as experiences come by, I feel like less is more. I'd rather be with one or two people that truly allow me to be brave with myself than having a gazillion people where I'm always afraid of showing who I am.
Yeah, that's critical. Like the quality of people that you keep close to yourself, learning how to evaluate the individuals that make up the community that you surround yourself with is another highly important skill just in life in general, not just for artists, but for everyone. I love this idea of a brave space because it feels uplifting. The concept feels progressing, courageous in a way that safe space can feel static. Safe space, I can sense by contrast, it feeling enabling.
Yes.
That's probably a very controversial word to say because of all the connotations it brings up. But when we enable others to remain static versus lovingly encourage people to be brave, to grow.
Safe space it had a place to be, right? Because it started from a moment where nobody was allowed to maybe share emotions or to be who they were because they were heavily judged. And it's still happening today, but less. I think there's more of an opening for diversity and for different mindsets and everything. So it was a space for people to bring up who they were without feeling like they needed to keep hiding. But now, for me, it receives more of a connotation, fear-based, of like a safe space is where you can tiptoe. I don't know and this is heavily controversial, I agree, but it's less empowering. Let me create a safe space for you so that you're less afraid of being who you are, instead of creating a space of tolerance and openness where everyone individually can show who they are, and where you agree to disagree with how the person is or not, because you may or may not identify with what the person identifies with, but you still allow for the person to be their true, authentic self and express themselves fully without putting restrictions.
Yeah, if safe space opened the door, then perhaps brave space is widening that entry point, welcoming everyone into the house, building on the idea of acceptance and love.
Oh my God, two images came to me as you were saying that. One was the entry of a house. There's the hallway where you put your shoes in some houses and your coat and everything, and then you enter. And so that would be the safe space. And then the big hall with people reunite and play music and dance, and the great ball is the brave space.
Yeah.
And another more spiritual, weird one, it was the channel of birth. That is a safe space. You're kept safe in the womb and you're still safe going through the channel of birth. And then the brave space is when you're actually born.
Oh my God, that gave me chills. Oh my God, you might make me cry.
And it's true, right? It feels like when you allow yourself to be brave enough to sustain yourself the way you fully are, and that can be always evolving, when you truly embrace that you can be yourself and evolve with yourself, then you're truly alive. You're truly birthing yourself in the world, I think.
And the same metaphor holds true for our art, our creations. They are safe with us in the solitude part of the journey. We hold them close. We incubate them as we work on them and grow them and give birth to them. And then at some point, if we really want to see them flourish, they must exit the womb and be brought out into the light of the world for others to see and for them to have their own personal impact.
Remember when we were having a conversation with the Bijou Collective about, You as an artist or a creator or creative, you can curate what you want to put out there for the world to see. But the way the people receive it, it's completely individual and you can't control it. I feel like it's a very pretentious thing to say that you are 100% as a creator in control of how the audience or the spectator receives the content that you're producing. There lies the subjectivity of art, where it touches a person in a melancholic way, it touches another person in a joyful way. Is the power of the artist to give birth to those ideas. And then that art is no longer yours. It becomes the art of the receiver.
Yeah.
You did it, of course, and you created it. So you have that merit of incubation, as you say. But then once it's out there, it no longer belongs to you. And that's where communion happens. I feel like true communion is the true communication where the channel of the artist goes directly to the spectator, where the spectator gives it a meaning, or the audience or the receiver gives it a meaning. Then the cycle is complete. The tunnel of energy is there. That's what they always told us in theater. Our teachers were very adamant when we were studying the National Conservatory here in Mexico. It was, your goal is to create community with the people that are sitting, watching you. It's not about you. It's about how you create an invisible line of energy that connects the story that you're telling to the people that are sitting in their seats.
Yes, that resonates deeply with me because that's how I view my purpose in acting, my role in acting, especially on stage in the theater, is I am just here to be as open of a conduit of energy and emotion and channel it out toward the audience for them to receive.
Yeah, and when you see it that way, I think it is a round circle that you feel less lonely or less isolated because you are working for your purpose and you are working for something bigger than yourself, maybe, or outside of yourself or outside of the ego, let's say.
Right.
And then we are all part of it. The solitude that you take is just a contemplation of what you created, of what you achieved, of how it was received. That's where the solitude contemplate, I think.
Well said.
Well,
Wow.
Here in the den of fake Hades, because obviously the closet doesn't close because obviously I don't fit in the closet. It's so funny. I put a chair inside so that I could sit and talk to you calmly. But obviously the door doesn't close. Half of the chair is out.
We do what we have to do. We get creative.
We keep on bringing these subjects to all of you so that perhaps you can share with us your ideas or your perceptions of this. And hey, there's time and space for any type of feeling or sensation or topic. And we might not always be funny or we might not always be joking, but I think that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of this proposal that we're doing.
Yeah. I'm curious if anyone out there listening has, I don't know, anything that resonates with them about their cycles of solitude and or loneliness, and then moving through into community. How did you work through that? I'd love to hear what other people have to say.
Thank you, Erin, for doing this episode with me in a little bit of a different setting and a distance. I always love to talk to you, and we hope that you all out there are having a good time with this podcast.
Thank you, Tessie. I'm really glad we got to connect this way.
Hey, I'm sure you loved this episode. Before you go, here are 3 ways you can help us keep things crazy.
You could just leave us a rating or share this episode so more people can access this content. Easy peasy, right?
Feeling ultra crazy?
Donate to the show by clicking the link provided in the podcast description or on our Instagram's bio.
I'm sure you will.
Stay crazy out there, y'all.
Stay crazy!